Hey there, David Gordon from TheaterMania here with Josh Dela Cruz, star of Nick Jr.'s new Blues Clues reboot, Blues Clues and You, longtime veteran of Broadway's Aladdin. But first things first, you are on a new CD that came out, sir.
I am. I
It,
am.
it came out on Friday. It's called American Morning.
That's
Uh,
right.
it's a new musical. I guess you would call this a concept album. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's coming out now? There were a couple of release issues due to COVID, so it got pushed back just a little bit. So it should come out beginning of July. But yeah. So but what's coming out in July is going to be it's the concept album of the show that we worked on when I was on board with the show. I was at Playwrights Horizons doing a workshop, and they just did it at the New York ART, and it was such a beautiful show. And with everything going on, Timothy thought that the best way to honor the show and to really benchmark it was to create this concept album produced by Alexander Sajoyan, which is I'm really excited for people to give it a listen.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting story.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that it's based on a New York Times piece
that's right.
about cab drivers.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Timothy took that story in from the New York Times about a cab driver hacking another cab driver, and created this tale, really examining what it's like to be an immigrant in America, and how the I guess American ideals and trying to fight for your place in the world and to reclaim what you lost being an immigrant. How that affects the way that you treat each other as people. And so it's really interesting because these two cab drivers immigrated at the same time. They share a cab. They don't know each other at all, but they have a mutual connection by an uncle who is played on the concept album by Tom Sesma.
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, so he's who connects them. And they share a cab. One drives in the morning, one drives at night. And essentially what happens is you see these two people starting from the same exact place, and one rises faster than the other. And what are the consequences of that? And how are their attitudes defined by that rise? And it's really interesting, especially I'm an immigrant myself.
Yeah.
And the themes that they show in this concept album and within the show are things that I've experienced growing up. My dad, for example, he worked internationally. He worked for a pretty big company in the Middle East when my sister and I were born there. It was a very different Middle East. It wasn't the frou-frou Middle East that it is now.
Yeah.
But my dad was working there. He met my mom there. They're both Filipino, and he was part of an international community, and they all spoke English, but nobody cared about their accents because everyone had an accent.
Right.
And then fast forward to immigrating to the United States, I remember seeing my dad and how defeated he was at times because of how people judged him based on his accent. And he is completely fluent in English, but it's so interesting how the attitude changes about the person that you're speaking to. A lot of times people didn't think that he was intelligent, or that he wasn't trying hard enough to be American. And that is definitely explored within this piece, it's really near to my heart.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good jumping off point, talking about yourself as an immigrant because you grew up in Dubai.
Yeah. Very different. Yeah, and I was we left Dubai when I was 2. So I grew up there, but for the most part I was in Yonkers. So really more like Barnaby from Hello Dolly. Yeah.
Amazing. As an immigrant, though, what does it mean for you to be hosting a show like Blues Clues and You, which is such an American staple?
Yeah.
And, what is that like?
It's incredible. It's an opportunity that I never saw in a million years. I never thought that I would be on on television. Really, I wanted to be on television ever since I became an actor. But because of the state of the world, I never really saw myself reflected in a way that I identified with. So I was either, when I was watching movies and TV growing up, I was either the foreigner, the villain, some like the butt of the joke,
Right.
which was, yeah, exactly, which is something that I don't identify with. I love jokes, and I love really intelligent comedy. And really silly comedy, but I never identified with anything. So I never saw myself being able to make it in the television arena. The only reason that I thought theater was a feasible career was actors like Lea Salonga and Tom Sesma and Harada. I remember seeing Anne in Avenue Q, and then later in Les Mis.
Yeah.
And I remember just being completely blown away and thinking like, oh, I don't have to play just an Asian person. And
Yeah.
that was hugely important for me. So I never thought that I would be in television, let alone children's television. And then to take it another step further, to be in Blue's Clues, which is a show that I watched with my little sister growing up. So it's a really important show for me and for many, many people in the States and abroad. It's strange. It's always going to be strange to me, especially whenever I see a commercial pop up and it's me, and I remember the commercial, but it's really surreal because I love my job so much, but I often forget because I'm just in front of a green screen that I'm projected into this world and I'm part of Blue's Clues, the show. That it's really, really incredible.
If you're watching at home and you have a question for Josh, pop them in the comments. We'll get to it. Before we go more into Blue's Clues, I want to talk about Aladdin, because you opened Aladdin on Broadway.
Yes.
You were in that show until like 2017, right?
Yeah.
2018.
I think what is it now? Yes, I think 2018. Woo.
Yeah. Yeah. And it opened in 2014. So you were in that show for a long, long time.
I was in that show for a very long time, yeah.
You were in the ensemble. You stood by for Aladdin.
That's right.
How many times did you go on as Aladdin?
Oh, gosh. I remember, so kind of long story. I was an understudy for Aladdin, and I had to get knee surgery when we came back from Canada. So I missed opening night and came in 2 days after opening night. So if you count that, just my week on Broadway, my first week on Broadway, I had done just as many shows as my ensemble as I had done Aladdin.
Oh, wow.
I was just thrown right into it. It was wild. I wouldn't trade it for the world, because it's such an amazing way to kind of peel the Band-Aid off, rip the Band-Aid off rather, on my understudy role. But I had done it for I had done a lot. I'd been on a lot. I want to say in my first year, close to how many performances? 50? I want to say 50. That sounds about right. And then in 2016, I want to say, I took over for 3 months, and that was really, really amazing. Before Telly came in. Yeah. And yeah, it was that at that point, Aladdin was my favorite job I've ever done.
I was going to say, is that show as fun as it looks, or is it like real hard work when you're both in the ensemble and covering the lead?
Both. It is like, I loved my job so much, and it's really funny because I love the people and I miss the people dearly, and I think that's why I stayed for so long. Yeah. Being an understudy was really exciting because you never knew, there was no, every show is different.
Right.
But as an understudy, you are always kind of on your toes. And the moment you sit back on your heels, you get a phone call and you're like, whew, I got to get back. I got to review things again. So it was really exciting. And then I think maybe going into my third year, I picked up an Iago understudy, believe it or not. And so to be able to play with Jonathan Freeman in that role was
the original Jafar.
I mean, what is happening? That it was incredible. His timing and his specificity are masterful, and to be able to learn on stage with him, it was a dream.
The fact that he's been in this show for that long.
Yeah.
He's still in the show.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's still consistently fresh just blows my mind.
It's incredible, you know, because no matter what happens, no matter, you know, rain or shine, whatever baggage we bring into the theater and check at the door before we walk on stage, he is consistent. He is, his energy and his specificity are always on point. He's masterful.
This might be a loaded question to ask, but what company is more fun to work for, Disney or Nickelodeon?
They're very different. They're very different. I love working with Nickelodeon. And of course now, like, I'm a complete turncoat because I was working for Disney and now I'm working for Nickelodeon. Yeah. I love Nickelodeon. It was really, for me, on Aladdin, it was the people. So, I mean, we're a company of 24, plus stage managers and crew. We're around like 50. And so you see 50 people every day that you're working closely with. And we're a family. And it's such a completely different experience because you're on stage with so many people. Right. There is the audience and there are the ushers. There's this gigantic family that you're working with every show. And then you peel it back to Nickelodeon with the producers, the writers, the directors, everyone on set. That is now your family. So I'm going from a day-to-day standpoint, I'm going from a family of 50 to a family of 12. And it's they're both different, and I love them both. But I will say that I'm having an absolute ball working on Blue's Clues because we're entertaining, but we're also helping kids, which is something that I've wanted to do for a while. Was
that just a standard audition?
Oh gosh, yes. It started off as a standard audition. So I was actually in the bunker. So backstage of Aladdin is actually underneath the stage, and that's the area we call the bunker. And so the entire ensemble is separated into little sections, but we're all sitting underneath. And at this point, I'm very comfortable with the show, so I'm able to like answer emails and do those kinds of things. And I get an email from my agent saying, "Hey, Blue's Clues is auditioning," and I thought, "Oh, it's coming back. That's cool." And so I prepared for it like a standard audition. I went in. Except that I will say that auditioning for Nickelodeon specifically is my favorite because you audition in at Viacom at 1515 Broadway. So you're like 37 floors up. You have an amazing view. You have these really comfortable couches. It says Nickelodeon when you walk in. There's TVs playing cartoons and shows on Nickelodeon live. So it's a completely different experience than Pearl or like Ripley Greer. Exactly.
I like T-shirts or studios.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this is already an amazing experience. But I didn't hear back for a month after that first initial audition, and I felt good about it. But you know, another one bites the dust. And then my agent sends me an email a month later, and he's just as surprised as I am. He's like, "I guess this is still happening. You have a callback." And so I go in for my callback. I get notes, and then they send me in for a screen test, which is kind of the end of the road. Like that's a really good thing. So I went in, and it was green screen. They had me in a blue shirt, and I had to work with. They gave me props to work with, and I'm working with the director, with the producers, there's mics, there's lights, there's sound. So it's really cool. I've never experienced that before in my life. And then I let it go. I felt okay. About it. And then they put me on hold for another month, which is for me as a theater person auditioning specifically only for theater. That's weird already.
Right.
And then they asked me to come in again. And so I'm like, okay, these are all good things.
Right.
And it was down to 4 people, 2 guys and 2 women. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. I went in, did my final audition with a couple of new things, a couple of tweaks. And it was so funny because I didn't want to be late for the audition. I didn't want to be stressed. So I used all of my points to get a hotel room, a very small hotel room that was like down the street from where I was auditioning. because it was at a second Nickelodeon location in the West Village. So I was like, I am not being late for this thing.
I am not risking the subway for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to show up sweaty. And I'm so glad that I did, because I got up early. I prepared, and I was able to let it go. And I traveled to Alaska the next day because my wife was doing a Jersey Boys contract for Norwegian. And I told her, I was like, I don't want to say it out loud, but I really want this job. And, lo and behold, I finally get to do it. And it was a ride. Even though it took maybe like 3 to 4 months, it felt like a roller coaster. Like it was wild.
Tell me about, that's a great story. I love that story. That's like one of my favorite audition stories that I've ever heard.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me about working with Steve, the original host.
Yeah.
And Donovan.
Yeah.
I know, like, how much input did they have on this, and how much did you like hang out with them or work with them, or like even commiserate about the process?
So Steve, for those of you who aren't familiar with his real name, Donovan Patton is who plays Steve's brother, Joe. So if you grew up with Joe, it's Donovan. And so Steve actually snuck up on me at an audition, at my first screen test. And so like I was saying, it's green screen, and there are a lot of drapes and masking for light and sound. And so I knew people were behind them. I just didn't, I was like producers or whatever. And then so the director, he's sitting off to the side watching a monitor. And he's like, great, Josh. And he gave me some notes. And then he starts walking back to his chair. And he's like, oh, Steve, do you have anything for Josh? And then parting the curtain, Steve Burns walks out. And it's like, hey, what's going on? I'm Steve. I'm like, oh, hey, Steve. And then I was like, Steve, oh, you're the guy. You're Steve. And then I immediately got super nervous because, like, he's watching me do the thing that he created, and I am not worthy. And as soon as he started talking, it was like the show. He's a voiceover actor, and so he has just such immense depth in his voice that he didn't use in the show when crafting his character. And as soon as he started talking, I immediately felt calm. I felt confident, like I was supposed to be there. And fast forward to before filming our first season, we did workshops at Ripley Greer. And he pulled me aside and he was like, hey, Josh, I don't know if anyone told you, but I want to make sure that you heard it from me, that we love you and we cast you because we love you and the things that you did. So no matter what happens in that process, don't ever feel like you have to recreate anything that I or Dono did in the past. We want you to keep exploring what you bring to the table and celebrate you. And when I met Donovan, he said the same exact thing when I met him on set for season 1. Yeah. And what's funny, for the first episode, because Steve wears green, we actually couldn't be filming together at the same time.
Right.
So Donovan and Joe were filming together, but they had a blue screen up for Steve and then green screen up for Joe. And so they were filming next to each other, but I couldn't be there. But it was the best because I could watch. Right. And watching them be so free and to play, it washed away all of my nerves and be like, oh, Josh, you know how to play. You know how to do this. And it was amazing.
Question from a viewer. What's your favorite episode of Blue's Clues that you've done so far?
Ooh, my favorite episode of Blue's Clues would have to be the first episode. The first episode, because I get to be on screen with Steve and Joe, which is crazy. And the first clue that I drew was a cup. And I remember vividly being in my aunt's bedroom with my little sister, because that's where she had the cable, watching on Saturday morning, and Steve drawing the cup. And I remember it. And I remember I was on set and I was drawing the clue for the very first time. And I was like, Josh, what is happening right now? You are drawing the cup. And so it was kind of a full circle moment for me. And it was that episode changed my life, just the way that I work and the process in creating the process of how to do my job in this new role. That episode's my favorite. In season 2, there are a lot of amazing songs that I cannot wait for everyone to hear. Our composers, P.T. Walkley and Peter Zizzo, have there's some bumping tunes. I can't wait.
You like, how many have you shot so far? Because I know it's still airing. I know technically season 1 is still airing, I think.
So we have filmed, I think every episode of season 1 has been released, but now they're playing them. They're in reruns, and you can watch them on the Noggin app or on Nick Jr. or on Nickelodeon, depending on the time. But we have filmed 20 episodes in season 1. So 20 episodes are done. 20 episodes are in post-production now. It's so funny because on the other side of this backdrop, there is a ton of equipment that they shipped me because we have to do ADR remotely since because of COVID. So it's a mess back there.
Yeah, I was going to say everybody's learning how to turn their living room into a TV studio now.
Oh, it's insane! It's insane. I'm having so much fun geeking out with all the equipment and everything. So that's fun for me. But you know, my poor wife, she is just surrounded by soundproofing panels and light stands and things like that.
1,000 ring lights in your living room.
Oh my, yeah, exactly. It's like it's always bright. But what was it? Yeah. So it's that there are 20 episodes that are in post-production now. And so whenever we get the green light to go back, we were supposed to go back to Toronto in July to start filming season 3. But that's a little bit in limbo. So hopefully we'll be back before the fall.
Yeah. Question from viewer: do you prefer performing live or on camera?
They're completely different beasts. I love them both. There's something very exciting about performing live because you can't take it back. Yeah. And it is what it is. There's an organic relationship between the audience and you. And I love them both. It's such a cop-out answer, but I love them both.
Back when the show first started airing, like back when the before time when people were allowed to go back outside and stuff, when you would like walk down the street, would you like had people started recognizing you yet? Like had kids started recognizing you?
It wasn't kids. It was really interesting. It was younger people, and at the beginning, it was usually Filipinos. And there's immense Filipino pride whenever any one of us makes it into mainstream. Yeah. And it's super important, and I was so honored. But I post a lot of pictures of my dog and I. So whenever I was walking Ollie, that's usually when people would be like, I think that's the Blue's Clues guy. And they're like, hey, aren't you? So that was really cool. And on the Macy's Day Parade, my wife and I rode the train back to Jersey to visit family. And it was packed, so I was standing. And there was a woman sitting with her kid, couldn't have been more than a year old. And he just kept staring at me. And I had just performed on the parade. And I was like, he might know who I am. I don't know. And then I thought he said Blue Clue. And I was like, huh, he might know who I am. And as we were leaving the train, the mom touches me on the arm. She said, you were great today, by the way. And I was like, oh, okay. So they watched the show. And that was really, really heartwarming for me.
Do you have a favorite memory that sticks out from Aladdin?
Absolutely. I love the unplanned mess ups, and sometimes, oh my goodness, there are some gems, but there is one in the number Babcock Omar Aladdin Kasim, where Aladdin meets Jasmine for the first time. Getting into the number, there's this whole like bit where we try to outdo each other. Aladdin and the friends try to outdo each other, and I have this move called the Aladdin. And what happened was that like you do this move and then you jump up and then I land in like this pose. And so what happened was that when I jumped up and I landed in the pose, I started to fall back. But in doing so, I also got caught in the Aladdin pants and tripped backwards. And I was like, Josh, just roll out of it. It'll
Yeah.
be fine. So I started to roll out of it. But in doing so, I knocked over Brian Gonzalez,
Oh.
who was standing behind me. And then I also knocked over a drum. And so everything fell and it was quiet and I didn't get up. I was still on the floor. And it was the most awkward thing I had ever done. And luckily everyone was okay. But I do also remember that throughout the entire number, the audience is very sweet, but my cast is viciously laughing. And you know, we love each other, so it's never a malicious thing. And I remember having such a good time because nothing could have gone worse.
I feel like that's a good place to end on.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, David.
Yeah, Josh, thank you for doing this. Blue's Clues is on now. American Mornings will be out in July.
American Morning will come out in July. My Instagram is It's Josh Dela Cruz. So I will be posting when the CD actually does come out and when it's able to stream. So stay posted there.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of people.
Thanks.
Yeah. Josh, have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.